In 1929, a man sat in the freezing dark at the top of a mountain in California, staring into the largest telescope on Earth. His name was Edwin Hubble. What he saw through that lens cracked the universe open. The galaxies were not sitting still. They were rushing away from us and away from each other in every direction at once. The universe was not a fixed room with walls. It was more like a balloon being blown up, stretching in every direction. It was expanding. That single observation rewrote physics, and there was no way, none, for anyone to have known it before that night on the mountain. Except that roughly 1,300 years earlier, in the middle of the Arabian desert, a line had already been recited out loud. A line about a sky that Allah keeps widening. And it was not the only one. 6 lines like it sit scattered through the Quran, and each one seems to brush up against something science would not confirm for another 1,000 years or more. So here is the question this entire video is going to answer, honestly, all the way to the end. Did the Quran really name these things before we found them? Or are we quietly reading our own discoveries backward into an old book and calling it a miracle? Let me show you the line about the sky first. It is in Surah Ad-Dhariyat, the 51st chapter, verse 47. The words are these: وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ. And the heaven we built with power, and indeed we are its expander. That last word, musi'un, comes from an Arabic root that means to widen, to make vast, to extend outward. Now, a certain kind of video stops right there and declares victory. The Quran said the universe is expanding 1,400 years before Hubble. End of story. Share and subscribe. I am not going to do that, because if you actually know the classical commentators, you know it is not that simple, and pretending it is will get you taken apart in your own comment section by someone who has read Tabari. So the real question is sharper than the popular one. It is not just did the Quran mention these 6 things. It is this: which of them hold up when a scholar checks the Arabic and a physicist checks the science, and which of them are hype that falls apart the moment somebody pushes back? Everything you're about to hear is sourced. When it is the Quran, I name the chapter and the verse. When it is a hadith, I name the collection, the number, and whether it is authentic. When it is classical tafsir, I say so plainly. And when it is apologetics reaching too far, I will tell you that too, because the honest version of this story is far stronger than the exaggerated one. So, here is what I am promising you. This is the full and honest account of the 6 cosmic claims people make about the Quran, taken straight from the Quran, from authenticated hadith, and from the classical tafsir tradition. Most of us have ended up in one of 2 camps. In the first camp, you have heard the confident version, the one that treats the Quran like a science textbook, where supposedly every modern discovery was spelled out in advance, atom for atom, orbit for orbit. In the second camp, maybe you have heard a skeptic push back and say the whole thing is cherry-picking, that you can read anything you want into a vague old poem if you squint hard enough. What almost nobody tells you is that both camps are partly right, and that is exactly what makes this interesting. Some of these 6 lines are genuinely startling, and they survive real scrutiny. Some are beautiful resonances that the text allows, but never locks down. And at least one famous claim, the one about the Quran and iron, is not science at all. It is a number game, and it makes careful Muslims quietly wince. By the end of this video, you will be able to tell which is which, and defend the strong ones without ever touching the weak ones. The 6 lines live in 6 chapters. Ad-Dhariyat, on the expanding sky. Al-Anbiya, on a heaven and earth that were once joined and then split apart. Al-Hadid, on iron sent down. Al-Anbiya again, on the sun and the moon each swimming in an orbit. Ar-Rahman, on 2 seas with a barrier between them. And Fusilat, on a heaven that began as smoke. We will take them in order of how much weight each one can actually carry, saving the heaviest for near the end. First, the orbit of the sun, because there is a Sahih Hadith standing behind it. Then the two seas. Then the smoke. Then iron, where I will show you exactly where the trap is. Then the great splitting. And last, the expanding sky, where the deepest lesson of this whole video is quietly waiting. Before we walk into the first one, take 10 seconds with me. The comments on this channel come in from everywhere. Cairo, Jakarta, Lagos, Toronto, Manchester, Hyderabad, small towns. I have to look up on a map after I read them. It genuinely moves me that a video made in one small room reaches a brother driving a truck through the night and a sister studying late for exams on the same evening, half a world apart. So do me one small favor. Scroll down and tell me the city and the country you are watching from right now. Not only for me, for the next person who scrolls down, sees your comment, and realizes this reached someone in their part of the world too. All right, back to the sky. Start with the sun and the moon, because this is where the text is tightest. For most of human history, people looked up and assumed the heavens were fixed. The great Greek model, the one educated people carried for over 1,000 years, imagined the stars and planets stuck into solid crystal spheres, turning around a motionless earth. The sun rose, the sun set, and most people assumed the sun itself was going around us while we stood still. Then look at what the Quran says in Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter 21, verse 33. وَهُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَرَ وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. And it is He who created the night and the day, and the sun and the moon, each one swimming in an orbit. Sit with two of those words. Falak in Arabic does not mean a flat path or a straight line. It means a rounded course, an orbit. And yasbahun does not mean sitting still or being dragged. It is the word for swimming, for a body moving under its own motion through something, the way a fish moves through water, not nailed to a sphere. Swimming. There is more in Surah Yasin, chapter 36, verse 38. Wash shamsu tajri li mustaqarrin laha. And the sun runs on toward a resting place appointed for it. The sun is not parked in the sky. It is running toward a destination. And here is the one piece of this that reaches the highest level of authenticity, an actual authentic hadith. In Sahih al-Bukhari, hadith number 3199, and in Sahih Muslim, hadith 159, narrated by Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, may Allah be pleased with him, the Prophet, peace be upon him, asked him at sunset if he knew where the sun goes. Then he explained that the sun runs on to its appointed place and returns by the command of Allah until a day when it will be told to rise from the west. This is not tafsir and it is not folklore. It is graded authentic by both Bukhari and Muslim, agreed upon. Now here is what modern astronomy found, and I want to be careful and honest about it. Our sun is not the center of anything, and it is not still. It is orbiting the center of the Milky Way galaxy, carrying you and the whole solar system with it at hundreds of thousands of miles per hour. One full lap around the galaxy takes the sun more than 200 million years. Astronomers sometimes call one of those laps a cosmic year. The moon orbits the Earth orbits the sun orbits the galaxy, and the galaxy itself is moving. Everything is swimming. Here is where I hold the line, because it matters. I'm not going to claim the Quran revealed the exact heliocentric model, or the galactic year, or Newton's laws. It did not, and the hadith about the sun was debated by classical scholars long before telescopes. What the Quran did do is refuse the fixed, motionless picture that nearly every ancient culture accepted. It said each body swims in its own orbit, and it said the sun is running to an appointed end. In an age of crystal spheres, that word swimming is a strange and quiet thing to find in the text. Picture the difference like this. The whole ancient world imagined the heavens as jewels glued onto turning glass. The Quran's word is water, and things that move through water on their own. That is the first one, and it is solid. But the story of these signs does not stay in the sky. It comes down to the water, and to a boundary you can almost see with your own eyes. Any sailor in the ancient world knew that where a great river pours into the sea, something odd happens at the meeting line. The waters touch, but they do not instantly blend. There is a seam. The Quran describes exactly this in Surah Ar-Rahman, chapter 55, verses 19 and 20. Maraj al-Bahraini yaltaqiyan. Bainahuma barzakhun la yabghiyan. He released the two seas, meeting side by side. Between them is a barrier they do not overstep. And in Surah Al-Furqan, chapter 25, verse 53, it is even more specific. Hada adhabun furatun wa hada milhun ujaj wa ja'ala bainahuma barzakhan wa hijran mahjura. This one fresh and sweet, and this one salty and bitter, and he placed between them a barrier, a partition not to be crossed. The classical commentators read this plainly as the meeting of fresh water and salt water, with the barrier being the power of Allah, keeping each one distinct. And modern oceanography confirms the physical mechanism. When two bodies of water differ in salt content and density, they do not simply merge on contact. A boundary layer forms between them, a zone scientists call a halocline, where the saltier, heavier water slides beneath the lighter, fresher water, and the two resist mixing along a surface you can measure. Where a river meets the ocean, this creates what is called a salt wedge, a real physical seam in the water. Think of it as an invisible fence under the surface, held up not by a wall, but by the difference in the water itself. Now let me stop you before you go and post the famous photo, the one that goes viral every few months, showing two oceans supposedly meeting in a hard line and never mixing. That photo, usually taken in the Gulf of Alaska, shows glacial melt and sediment meeting seawater, and the truth is, those waters do eventually mix. The hard line is temporary. If you build your argument on that image, a skeptic will destroy it in one reply, and rightly so. The honest claim is the subtler one. Water bodies of different density form real, resisting boundaries, exactly the barzakh the Quran names. You do not need the fake photo. The real science is enough, and the word barzakh, a barrier, is precise. That is a barrier in the water. Next comes something with no barriers at all, a heaven before there was anything solid in it. Go back to the very beginning, before the stars, before the planets, before Earth. What was there? Surah Fusilat, chapter 41, verse 11, gives an image. ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى إِلَى السَّمَاءِ وَهِيَ دُخَانٌ. Then he turned toward the heaven while it was smoke. Dukhan. Smoke. Some of the classical commentators understood Dukhan here as vapor, as gas, as a formless haze that came before the heavens were shaped and ordered. Keep that in mind because it lines up with something remarkable. When astronomers trace the universe backward, they do not find a sky full of finished stars and planets waiting at the start. They find gas. The early universe was an enormous hot cloud of the lightest elements, mostly hydrogen and helium, spread thin across everything. Stars and galaxies did not exist yet. They had to form later, as gravity slowly pulled that gas into clumps that grew dense enough and hot enough to ignite. Even today, new stars are born inside vast clouds of gas and dust that astronomers call nebulae. The cosmos began as a kind of fog, and only later did that fog curdle into suns. I will be honest about the seam here. Smoke, in the strict sense, is what you get from burning tiny solid particles floating in air. The early universe was closer to hot gas and plasma than to literal smoke from a fire. So this is not a perfect scientific term. It is an image, a picture painted for a desert audience 1400 years ago of a heaven that began not as something built and solid, but as a spreading haze. As a picture, it holds. As a physics lecture, it does not pretend to be one, and neither should you. And one of the things that eventually condensed out of that cosmic haze is sitting inside your body right now, in your blood. Which brings us to iron and to the single biggest trap in this entire topic. Before I open it up, one quick thing. If this kind of video, sourced, careful, grounded in the Quran and honest about the science, is the kind of thing you want more of, do me a favor and share this one with a single person you know who would benefit from it. One person, that is the whole ask. Now let me show you the iron. Here is the strange fact about iron. Your blood is red because of it. Civilizations rose and fell over who controlled it, and yet iron cannot truly be born on a planet like ours. To understand why, you have to understand what a star actually is. A star is a furnace, fusing light elements into heavier ones and releasing energy as it does. Hydrogen fuses into helium, helium into carbon, and on up the ladder, and every step releases power that makes the star shine. But when a large star finally forges iron in its core, the ladder ends. Fusing iron does not release energy, it swallows energy. The furnace stops paying its own bills, and when that happens, the core collapses in on itself in less than a second, and the star detonates as a supernova, one of the most violent events in the cosmos, blasting that iron out across space. A star only makes iron with its dying breath, and only an exploding star can scatter it. The iron in your blood, in your buildings, in the core of this planet, was forged inside dying stars and thrown down through space long before the Earth existed. Now read Surah Al-Hadid, chapter 57, verse 25. وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ فِيهِ بَأْسٌ شَدِيدٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ. And we sent down iron, in which is great might and benefits for the people. Sent down. Anzalna. The astrophysics genuinely resonates with that phrasing, and it is a beautiful thing to reflect on. But now I keep my promise to you, because there are two ways people abuse this verse, and you need to see both. The first is small. Some argue that Anzalna, sent down, must mean iron literally fell from the sky, proving the writer knew about supernovae. Be careful. That same verb, Anzala, is used elsewhere in the Quran for things that clearly did not drop from space. In Surah Az-Zumar, chapter 39, verse 6, Allah says He sent down cattle for you. In Surah Al-A'raf, chapter 7, verse 26, He speaks of sending down clothing. Cattle did not rain from the sky. The word often means bestowed, granted, provided from above in the sense of divine giving. So the science is real, but do not hang the whole thing on the verb, or you will be corrected. The second abuse is the big one, and I want you to drop it completely. You have probably seen the claim that the word hadid, iron, adds up in Arabic letter numbers to 26, the atomic number of iron, and that al-hadid adds up to 57. And look, it is the 57th chapter, and 57 is an iron isotope. It sounds stunning in a thumbnail. It falls apart on inspection. The most common isotope of iron is iron 56, not 57. Iron 57 is a rare one, about 2%. So the claim quietly picks the uncommon isotope because that is the number that matches, and hopes you will not check. On top of that, the chapter counting and the letter math get shuffled around from one version of the claim to the next, because people are reverse engineering the answer they already want. This is not the Quran's argument. The Quran never asks you to count letters. When you lead with numerology like this, you hand every skeptic an easy kill, and you make the honest, powerful point that iron's origin in dying stars resonates with a verse that says it was sent down, look weak by association, scrape that barnacle off. You do not need it, so now we have the sun that swims, the barrier in the sea, the primordial smoke, and iron from the stars. What is left are the two boldest claims of all, and the one that taught me the most about what the Quran is actually doing. The first of the two is the most dramatic cosmological statement in the whole set. Surah Al-Anbiya, chapter 21, verse 30. أولم يرى الذين كفروا أن السماوات والأرض كانتا رتقا ففتقناهما وجعلنا من الماء كل شيء حي. Have those who disbelieved not considered that the heavens and the earth were once a joined mass, and we separated them, and we made from water every living thing? 2 words carry it. Ratq means something sewn shut, closed up, joined together as one. Fatq means the tearing, the splitting, the ripping apart of what was joined. The verse says the heavens and the earth began as one closed thing, and then were split. Think of a seam sewn tight and then torn open. Now hold that beside the modern picture. Scientists describe a beginning in which all of space, all of matter, everything was compressed into a single, unimaginably hot and dense state, and then expanded outward from that one point, unfolding into the universe we see. Everything that exists was once together, and then it separated. And the verse adds a second line that biology loves. From water, every living thing. Life on Earth is water-based to its core. Your cells are mostly water, and the story of life begins in it. Here is where I stay honest, because this one is strong, and I want it to stay strong. The classical commentators did not all read this as a cosmic explosion. Ibn Kathir and others record more than one classical reading. One reading is close to what we just described, that the heavens and earth were a single joined mass and were then separated. Another classical reading is that the sky was closed and shut, holding no rain until it was open to pour, and the earth was closed and barren until it was open to bring forth plants. Both readings are inside the tradition, so the joined then split understanding is not something modern apologists invented yesterday. It is genuinely there in classical tafsir. What I will not do is tell you the verse is a technical description of the Big Bang model, because the Big Bang is a scientific theory that scientists themselves keep refining. The verse gives you a startling picture, one joined thing, torn into 2. The science gives you a startling picture that rhymes with it. Let it be a resonance that makes you think, not a proof you stake your faith on. And that word, staking your faith on it, is the doorway to the last one and to the real lesson of this entire video. We started at the top of a mountain in 1929, with Hubble watching the galaxies flee. And we started with that verse, Wa inna la musi'un. Indeed, we are its expander. This is where the popular version plants its flag and shouts that the Quran predicted the expansion of the universe. Full stop. But I told you at the beginning I would give you the whole truth. So here it is. Open the classical commentaries on that exact word, musi'um. At-Tabari, one of the greatest of the early commentators, and others after him, did not read it as the metric expansion of space-time, because that idea did not exist yet. They read it as a statement about Allah, that He is possessed of vast power and vast means, that He is the one with limitless capacity, fully able to build such a heaven and more. The word carries both senses, wideness of the sky and vastness of the one who made it. So which reading is right? The classical one about God's power, or the modern one about the expanding cosmos? And here is the reveal I've been walking you towards this whole time. That question is a trap, and escaping it is the whole point. The Quran did not come down to win a physics debate in the year 2026. It never once calls itself a science manual. What it calls these things, again and again, is ayat, signs. It says, look at the sky, look at the sea, look at the mountains, look at your own creation, and reflect. The power of that verse is not that it secretly encoded the Hubble constant. The power is that a text recited by an unlettered man in a desert with no telescope and no laboratory turns your face upward and says the heaven is being made vast. Keep looking, it is bigger than you think. And every single century that humanity has looked harder, it has been bigger than we thought. That is the miracle that does not expire. And here is the flip side, the one nobody warns you about. If you build your faith on 1929 physics, on the specific claim that this verse proves this specific theory, then you have chained your iman to a scientific model. Models get revised. Theories get replaced. What happens to your faith on the day the textbook changes? The person who overclaims and the person who denies are making the same mistake from opposite ends. Both think the Quran's job is to be a science quiz. It is not. Its job is to be a sign that points you back to your Lord. So look at the two forces pulling on you as you watch this. On the outside, there is a whole industry selling you certainty. On one side, the hype channel that promises every discovery was predicted, atom for atom. On the other side, the debunker who says it is all coincidence and you are a fool for wondering. Both are selling you a clean, finished answer so you do not have to sit in the discomfort of not knowing everything. And on the inside, there is your own hunger, the part of you that badly wants a knockout proof, one undeniable line you can drop to end every argument forever. So you never again have to say the honest words, I find this beautiful, and I do not have it all figured out. The Quran's own word is your defense against both. Ayah, a sign. Not a mathematical proof of a physics theory, and not an empty coincidence. A sign is an invitation. It points somewhere. It asks you to look and to think, and it leaves room for you to walk the rest of the way yourself. So when you share these 6 things, and I hope you do, share them the honest way, the sun that swims in its orbit with a sahih hadith behind its motion, the barrier between the waters, real and measurable, without the fake photo, the heaven that began as smoke, an image that holds. The great splitting grounded in classical tafsir and echoed by modern cosmology, and the iron from dying stars, with the numerology scraped off and thrown away. Lead with the strong ones, never with the weak ones. A faith that can say this line is solid, this one is a beautiful maybe, and this one is overreach that I refuse to use, is a faith that can sit across from a physicist and never flinch. So let me bring you back to the mountain and to the question I planted at the very start. Did the Quran actually name these things before we found them, or are we just reading our discoveries backward into an old book? The honest answer is that it is a little of both, and the sorting is the gift. The sun's motion has an authentic hadith standing behind it. The orbit, the barrier in the sea, the smoke and the great splitting are grounded resonances, some of them rooted right in the classical commentaries. The iron is real science wearing a numerology costume you should strip off, and the expanding sky is the place where the Quran stops behaving like a science test and becomes what it always was, a voice from 14 centuries ago telling you to lift your eyes, because the heaven is vaster than you can hold, and so is the one who made it. You do not need the Quran to pass a physics exam. You need it to do exactly what it did to you in the last half hour, which is to make you look up and wonder. That wonder is the worship. That is what an ayah is for. In the next video, we are turning the telescope around, away from the stars and onto you. The Quran's description of how a human being is formed in the womb, in Surah Al-Mu'minun, the drop, the clinging form, the bones then wrapped in flesh. It is one of the most quoted scientific claims in the whole book, and also one of the most oversold. So we will do to it exactly what we did today. We will find where it is genuinely astonishing and where the apologists reach too far, and we will hand you the honest version you can actually defend. It is the same loop we opened tonight, closed from the inside of your own body. May Allah open our eyes to His signs in the heavens above us and in our own selves, and may He protect us from both the blindness that denies and the pride that exaggerates, and grant us the humble wonder He calls us to. Jazakumallahu khairan for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.